I never expected that evening to feel so charged, so electric. Yet here I was, standing at the edge of something I wasn't entirely ready to admit I wanted. Life had become a routine, predictable and safe, and part of me had begun to crave a break from it, even if only in thought. I had met them casually before, friends of friends, someone I'd noticed in passing but never really considered. Yet tonight, the air around them was different, a subtle, unspoken invitation that I couldn't quite ignore. There was a glance, fleeting but deliberate, one that made my pulse quicken in ways I hadn't anticipated. It was as if they were testing me, seeing if I would notice, and somehow I did, all too clearly. My chest tightened at the thought, and a thrill coursed through me, surprising in its intensity. I had always thought of myself as careful, restrained, moral, yet now I found my thoughts straying in directions I hadn't allowed before. They spoke casually, laughter in their voices, yet there was a hidden edge beneath the ordinary conversation. Something in the tone, the way their eyes lingered, hinted at possibilities that were unspoken but understood. A comment about curiosity, a joke about watching, something that would have seemed harmless in another context, but here it carried weight. The weight of temptation, of the forbidden. I felt it tug at me, a magnetic pull that was both exhilarating and terrifying. I told myself to step back, to remind myself who I was, yet my body betrayed my thoughts. My hands fidgeted, my breathing caught, and I realized that the idea of them watching wasn't just a fleeting notion. It was a desire I couldn't suppress. I started noticing the smallest details. The subtle movements, the way they leaned slightly closer when speaking, the glint in their eyes that suggested more than words. My own reaction surprised me. I caught myself imagining what it would feel like, imagining being observed, imagining surrendering to the moment in a way I never had before. A strange warmth spread through me at the mere thought. It was thrilling, frightening, yet undeniably alluring. My mind raced with possibilities, questions, fears, and the undeniable pull of curiosity. Every laugh, every glance, every almost touch seemed to carry a weight I hadn't expected. I felt caught between hesitation and longing, morality and desire, safety and the rush of stepping over the line. As the evening wore on, the tension built in a way that was almost tangible. I could feel it in the subtle shifts, the half-smiles, the fleeting looks, the pauses that said more than any words could. The air seemed charged with possibility, a quiet electricity that hummed beneath the surface. My heart pounded in rhythm with the unspoken invitation, and I realized with startling clarity that I was already leaning forward, already drawn into a world I had only dared explore in thought. The idea that they wanted to watch wasn't shocking anymore. It was a secret thrill I found myself sharing silently in my own mind. And for the first time in a long time, I felt alive, aware of every sensation, every detail, every choice that could push me further into temptation or pull me back into caution. The pull became impossible to ignore. Every subtle movement, every lingering glance seemed like a deliberate test, and I realized I wanted to be tested. My hesitation began to crumble, replaced by a thrilling awareness of my own desire. I noticed the way they watched me, not with judgment but with expectation. And the more I felt their gaze, the more I wanted it, craved it in ways that made my pulse race. It was intoxicating, the knowledge that someone could see me fully and I could choose to respond, to let them in, even in small ways. The idea of being observed was no longer foreign. It had become a quiet, insistent whisper I could not ignore. I found myself responding without thinking. A tilt of the head, the brush of a hand against an arm, subtle gestures that seemed to invite their attention. Every motion felt amplified, loaded with meaning, even if no one spoke it aloud. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier, charged with unspoken tension that I could feel deep in my chest. Each laugh, each shared glance became a thread pulling me further toward a line I had never dared approach. And yet, every moment of hesitation only heightened the excitement. My mind raced, imagining what it would feel like if I crossed it, imagining their reactions, imagining the thrill of shared secrecy and unspoken consent. I started noticing patterns in their behavior, the way they seemed to synchronize their movements, the way their eyes lingered a little longer, how they communicated without words. It was as if they were guiding me, drawing me into a rhythm I couldn't resist. The tension between us became a language of its own, subtle but potent, a push and pull that kept me on edge. Every subtle touch, every brush of fingers against a surface, carried an undercurrent of promise. I felt a heat rise within me, a combination of fear and desire, And I realized with a start that I was enjoying it more than I should. The thrill of being watched, of giving in even a little, became a need I couldn't deny. I could feel the atmosphere shift, the anticipation coiling tighter with each passing moment. It was a delicate balance, one wrong move and it could collapse into awkwardness or exposure, yet that danger only made it more intoxicating. My mind wandered to the possibilities, to the tension of performing, to the quiet thrill of consent and observation. Every instinct screamed caution, but every sensation urged surrender. I found myself leaning in, matching their subtle provocations, testing the boundaries in small ways, letting them see the curiosity and desire I had kept hidden. And in that exchange, the excitement became almost unbearable. There was a silence, almost imperceptible, that stretched just long enough to make my heart pound. The awareness of their attention was overwhelming, yet it was exhilarating, filling me with a mixture of fear, longing, and anticipation. I realized I was no longer just imagining, it was happening slowly, deliberately, and I was participating in the dance willingly. The awareness of being watched had become a mirror for my own desires, reflecting back every hidden wish I had kept buried. And for the first time, I understood that surrendering even partially was not weakness. It was acknowledgement of a craving I could no longer ignore. The moment arrived without fanfare, yet it carried the weight of everything that had been building. The air felt electric, thick with anticipation, every sound amplified, the faint scrape of a chair, the shuffle of feet, the quiet intake of breath. I could feel their presence like a tangible force pressing closer, an invisible pressure that drew me forward and made my pulse hammer in my chest. I had wanted this, desired it, and now that it was here, the thrill was sharper than I imagined, almost painful in its intensity. Each small movement I made seemed monumental, each gesture a declaration, and I realized how acutely aware I was of their eyes on me, of the attention I had sought and now held. My hands shook slightly, betraying the excitement I tried to contain, yet there was a strange satisfaction in the vulnerability. I felt exposed, yet powerful in a way I hadn't known existed. Every subtle reaction, breathing a little deeper, shifting weight, tilting my head, felt like a conversation without words, a shared secret conveyed through body and intention. Their presence was a mirror, reflecting my own desires back at me with clarity and intensity. The awareness that someone was watching, fully attentive, made everything sharper, more vivid, every touch, every breath, every heartbeat magnified. The tension coiled tighter with every passing second, a delicate electric thread connecting us all. I found myself leaning into the moment, testing boundaries, exploring limits I had only imagined. The thrill of observation, the knowing that I was being seen and judged, desired and mirrored, was intoxicating, filling me with a heat that was impossible to ignore. My mind teetered between exhilaration and fear, between surrender and control. Each glance, each subtle gesture, reinforced the unspoken agreement we shared. A choreography of desire played out in the quiet intensity of our proximity. The room seemed to shrink around us, every sound and movement amplified, every sense heightened. I became aware of the smallest details, the brush of fingers along a surface, the soft rustle of fabric, the tension in muscles, the rapid rhythm of my own heartbeat. It was overwhelming, yet mesmerizing, a sensory flood I could not resist. I realized I was giving in fully, allowing myself to be consumed by the attention, by the shared thrill of the forbidden. My moral compass, my careful boundaries, seemed to dissolve in the heat of the moment, replaced by an almost primal awareness of desire and consent, of watching and being watched. Even in surrender, there was control, a strange balance between yielding and commanding. Every action, every hesitation was intentional, a dance of temptation and tension that drew me deeper into the experience. I felt a mixture of guilt and exhilaration, shame and power, fear and liberation. Their presence, unseen but profoundly felt, became the axis around which the world turned, and I existed solely in the pulse of attention, the rhythm of anticipation, the silent dialogue of desire. It was intoxicating, all-encompassing and unforgettable. I realized that nothing had ever felt so vividly alive, so acutely present, as in this shared, unspoken, faceless communion. The moment passed, yet its impact lingered in every nerve, every thought, every heartbeat. The intensity of what had just unfolded left me shaken, breathless, and strangely exhilarated. I could still feel their presence, invisible yet undeniable, like a shadow that clung to me, reminding me of the choices I had made and the desires I had dared to indulge. The adrenaline ebbed slowly, leaving behind a strange mixture of satisfaction and guilt, a quiet storm of conflicting emotions that I could neither fully name nor ignore. It was intoxicating, unsettling, and yet somehow necessary, a confrontation with a part of myself I had long kept hidden. I moved through the room with heightened awareness, each sound sharper, each movement deliberate. The weight of observation, the memory of eyes on me, even without seeing faces, was still tangible, a pulse that thrummed beneath my skin. I found myself reflecting on the subtle power dynamics, on the thrill of surrender, on the dangerous exhilaration of being witnessed. It was a secret intimacy, unspoken yet deeply felt, and I realized that part of me had craved it all along. There was a sense of liberation and acknowledgement, a quiet admission that desire and temptation were not weaknesses but aspects of self that demanded recognition. Even as the evening ended, the tension did not fully dissipate. In the quiet that followed, I felt the lingering echoes of anticipation, the residual heat of shared attention, the weight of what had been experienced and what had been withheld. I thought about boundaries, about consent, about the fine line between indulgence and regret. I knew that the memory would remain vivid, a private thrill that existed solely within my awareness. And yet, the knowledge that it had happened, the unspoken, faceless exchange, left me with a mixture of wonder and unease, an understanding that the night had shifted something fundamental inside me. I couldn't help but replay the details in my mind, the subtle gestures, the whispered tension, the unspoken agreements. Each memory was a brushstroke in a complex painting of desire, control, and vulnerability. I reflected on myself, on the choices I had made, and on the silent thrill of crossing a line I had never before approached. It was a confrontation with the forbidden, a navigation of temptation, and a negotiation of desire that left me changed, aware of dimensions of myself I had never fully explored. The excitement, the guilt, the liberation, they all coexisted in uneasy harmony, a reminder that life is not always simple, not always safe, and often more intense than we anticipate. As I settled into the quiet aftermath, I recognized that this experience, though fleeting, had opened a door I might never fully close. It had reminded me of the power of attention, of desire, of curiosity, and of the thrill of shared secrets. Even without words or faces, without explicit acknowledgement, something profound had shifted. I felt both lighter and heavier, aware of my desires, my choices, and the delicate tension between them. And as the night faded, I understood that the memory would linger, an invisible, faceless imprint of temptation, thrill, and the dangerous exhilaration of being seen and watching in return.